The Ready, Set, Grow podcast is sponsored by Ag Expert, software designed for Canadian agriculture. Visit them today at agexpert.ca.
Welcome, everybody. This is Joe Dales with RH Accelerator, and today we're recording the Ready, Set, Grow podcast, where we interview interesting and innovators in the agriculture and food space. I'm really looking forward to this discussion today. We have Owen Roberts, who's we've known for a long time and is a very influential person in the area of agriculture and communications. Owen is the faculty member and instructor of the Department of Agriculture, Leadership and Communications at the University of Illinois in Champaign, Urbana, Illinois. He's coming to us right now from his home office in Guelph, Ontario, where, through COVID, he's been operating. So welcome, Owen. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Joe. It's always nice to speak with you, and I'm always happy to talk about agricultural communications and journalism anytime. So thanks for the opportunity.
So, for people that don't know you, can you give us a little bit of your bio and history and how the heck you got here? Where you've been and what you've done, because it's an interesting story.
Yeah, well, thanks. Sure. So I was born in Mitchells Bay, Ontario. Well, I was born in Chatham, but we lived in Mitchells Bay, Ontario. My dad was a conservation officer there, so there was lots of activity. It's a great hunting and fishing spot, that's for sure. So we weren't farmers. My mother's side, they were Cadots, and they were farmers, but we weren't. Anyway, so I grew up there. I worked on farms throughout my adolescent years, I guess, and ended up going to the University of Windsor for a communications degree. Became the editor of the Wolfsburg Courier Press, which is a funky, feisty little weekly newspaper when I graduated, and really cut my teeth there. Then had the opportunity to work in Western Canada, up in Cold Lake, Alberta, and eventually came down to Edmonton to work for a news magazine called Alberta Report. And they wanted an ag guy. And they walked in the newsroom one day and said, we need somebody to report on agriculture. Who wants to do this? And there was, 6 or 7 reporters. And nobody put up their hand, including me, because I was still, I thought I was going to be a music reviewer or, reviewing rock bands or whatever it might be. So they said to me, they knew my background, and they said, well, how about you? You're from a rural area. You must be somewhat versed at writing about ag. So I said, okay, I'll give it a go. Now in Alberta, the ag beat, which I didn't really realize at the time, if it's not tourism or natural resources, it's agriculture. And it turned out to be an incredible beat. So from there, that's where I started to specialize in reporting on agriculture. Got to know someone at Alberta Agriculture who ended up moving to a position at the University of Guelph and said, we really need somebody at Guelph to get the news out about what's going on with agricultural research here, because we're really a powerhouse. Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs is putting all kinds of resources into ag research, but people don't really know about it. And, we'd like a journalist to come in because, scientists are doing a great job with extension, but we really need somebody to get out the news to the media and beyond. So they created this position. It was a 1-year contract. I applied for it and got it. And 33 years later, I was still at the University of Guelph because it turned out they wanted to see if there was an appetite in the media and in the public for ag news. And there was all kinds of an appetite. People really wanted to know, even back then, where their food came from. And, regardless if it was me or whoever, top marks to the University of Guelph for creating this position, because it was the first full-time research reporting position at a Canadian university. Others in the news departments had reported on research, but my job was just to write about research. So time went on. I started a program there called SPARK, which is an acronym for Students Promoting Awareness of Research Knowledge. And we had students come and join us to learn journalistic principles about how to communicate research. And again, being at Guelph, it was a great deal of it. 70-ish% was ag research. So then they really got excited about it. I ended up teaching a course in ag communications and then 2 courses in ag communications. And then retirement was on the horizon. So I retired in August, and then the University of Illinois was looking for someone to help revitalize or build out its ag communication program, and it has one of the oldest ones in the U.S. And they kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Would you be interested in giving us a hand?" So again, one thing led to another, and now I'm a faculty member at the University of Illinois.
Wow, what a great story. I think we really don't tell our story in agriculture nearly as much. We don't commit the resources, right, to get the information out there. And I think it's so critical for innovation to flow, not just to farmers, but also, the bigger task is, talking to the consumer and That's trying right. to educate there. So they're big tasks and very limited resources. And, appreciate all that you've done to, you've trained a lot of students over the years with Spark, and, you've really influenced the industry. University of Illinois, that'll be a great adventure for you. That's one of our favorite universities, big land grant, strong agricultural program down there. Any observations, differences between Guelph and Illinois that you can talk about?
Well, I could probably talk more if I'd been there more, mm-hmm. But just right now, because I'm teaching virtually, I haven't really assimilated into campus yet. But with the students are, and it's an interesting mix. The students here that are studying ag are, I would say, mostly rural, mm-hmm. although that's changing. The students that were in my class this year were predominantly urban, from suburbs of Chicago. So they really come in interested in food and interested in learning more about the production of food, and then hoping that they'll end up with jobs at PepsiCo or many of the corporations that have headquarters in Chicago or nearby. Mm-hmm. But they all, Guelph students, Illinois students, have that passion for agriculture and the excitement when they learn about how diverse it is, how many jobs there are for qualified students, just waiting for them. And I think it's also a bit of an eye-opener for them to realize the kind of qualifications that a modern agricultural communicator or journalist needs to land a job. Mm-hmm.
What kind of things, how are you preparing them for those jobs?
Well, this is part of the building out of the program that we're doing now. I guess back in the day when I graduated with a communications degree, which was basically journalism, we had to know how to write stories and take photos. I just want to read you this. Just on Monday, I received a request from the Illinois Soybean Association. Did I know any students who would be interested in a startup job, entry-level job at the Illinois Soybean Association with their communications, with its communications department, which is very strong. Illinois, as you know, is a major soybean the major soybean producing state. So the communications arm that the organization has built up is very professional, very significant, and so I said, well, and then so they attached the job description. Here are the skills they'd like people to have. They would like them. This is for a communications coordinator position. Expertise in presentations, social media copy, magazine writing as a contributing writer to their magazine, excuse me, blog writing, video production, web updates, event planning, MailChimp, and graphic design, and a graphic design skill set, as well as, and this is at the end, a deep appreciation of agriculture and the 43,000 soybean farmers we serve. Any one of those skill sets could be a specialty.
Yeah, you can ask for it. You might not find the Swiss Army knife person that can.
Well, that's a good description of the person.
Do them all.
Needed. Do you mind if I borrow that? Because that's a very good description. That's that's what they're looking for. And maybe not, and I'm sure they'd be flexible as far as the expertise goes, but they want people to know about it.
Yeah.
This is what a modern ag, and this is what makes it so exciting right now.
Well, and they left out, the best for last, which, pretty hard to write for soybean growers if you don't understand, growing soybeans, because then you start making mistakes over, technical things, and farmers are the first ones to point out, hey, that's not a soybean, that's a lamb's quarter.
Yeah, well, that's right, and that's just the actual physiology or whatever. Then there are the issues surrounding soybean production or soybean exports or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I'll bet we spend as much time last semester talking about issues as we did how to communicate them. And that's really why it's legitimate to have a whole program in communications, because it's just not learning the skills about how to communicate. It's learning how to apply them in industry and what the issues are that you're going to be communicating. I mean, we're still learning that. I'm sure, myself, we're still learning the issues because they change a lot.
Yeah, they change.
Some of them remain, but some of them change.
Yeah, you've had a lot of global activity in some of the roles in the offices you've taken on. How important is that in your mind for agricultural communicators to be aware of what's going on around the world? Because agriculture is a big business everywhere, really.
It is indeed, and I think as an agricultural journalist or an agricultural communicator, having a having a global awareness is absolutely key. In Canada, we have an organization called the Canadian Farm Writers Federation, and there's upwards of 300 members. I think people don't even know that there are formal farm writers, at least not outside agriculture, but it's quite a discipline. And the Canadian farm writers have been very active in the international scene, because Canadian farm writers are very aware of what an exporting nation we have and how rich your stories can become by having content from countries that you're perhaps exporting to, and you want to get a comment from some of those countries. A great way to find out who the sources are is to ask other agricultural journalists. And there's quite a collegiality among journalists globally. So there's an international federation of ag journalists that the Canadian group belongs to, 50 countries with about 5,000 members.
Wow.
So almost anywhere we as Canadians are exporting to, you can find a journalist within this organization who can tell you who the chair of the importing organization in that country is, and you can get some comment about, why Canada. We have our own interpretation, but it's interesting to hear it from other countries and to know who you can go to.
Yeah, great points. Um, any other thoughts you want to share with our audience on the importance of ag communication and why they should support efforts and where they can?
Well, I think the key here is that people want to know, people as in consumers, stakeholders, decision makers, they want to know about agriculture, particularly about, I think, about production, what's leading to their food, how their food is produced. That's really where an ag communicator comes in. Um, and, I've thought for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years that in a farm management plan, I really encourage producers to set aside 5-ish% of their time, if they can, for communications. And that might be reading, but reading all the breadth of material that's out there for communications right now about agriculture, but also contributing through Twitter, contributing through a blog, perhaps contributing through Facebook. And I understand that it takes time, but I also think that the public really wants to know about agriculture, and it wants to hear from producers because it considers producers and researchers as well to be among the best sources for information about that. And there are some journalistic principles that can help. The good old 5 W's in the H. It never gets old. It always works. What are you doing? And why are you doing what you're doing on the farm? And how are you doing it? Those are things people really want to know.
Yeah, really interesting. And it's never been easier with things like social media and the farmers with their smartphones. They don't need to do 100 steps to post content that people can, see, how the crops are doing or how they operate their farming operations. So it's great new world, but it also, the challenges are there as well. So, when people aren't trained and so on. So, how can people get a hold of you, Owen, if they have questions? Are you on LinkedIn that they can, hunt you down and and follow you there? Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. They're welcome to get a hold of me at oroberts@illinois.edu.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to talk about ag communications, and Perfect. I know you are too, because you were a pioneer in the whole, certainly the electronic end of things. I've been following you forever, Joe.
Yeah, we love, for me, I love trying to bring innovation to farmers and help them because we know, they're fighting drought or they're fighting pests or markets or whatever. And so it's pretty easy to stay motivated when you're trying to help, people who you like working with. And I do love working with farmers and I feel like we're feeding the world in a small way. So, it's pretty easy to stay motivated and I love this industry. So same as you. So it's a lot of fun. Any last thoughts or any last comments to the audience?
I just encourage people to stay strong because so many of the attributes that agriculture has are the ones that people want to hear about and people want to feel good about. The way that that food is produced, I believe if consumers know about it, they can be educated in such a way that they will feel good about it. And particularly now with the push towards diversity and equity and inclusion, I think that's going to be the next frontier for agriculture, is to show how it's making strides in that area. And it'll be a challenge, but other industries do it, and I'm sure agriculture can as well. And then communicating how it's made those efforts to share the values that consumers do.
That's great.
That's an exciting new generation activity for ag communicators.
Yeah, great thoughts. We appreciate your time and your thoughts, and really appreciate all the good work you've done, communicating both to the industry and our farmers, as well as consumers over the years, and training the young people to take up the challenges as well. So,
Well, thanks.
yeah. So for our guests, thanks for joining us on this Ready, Set, Grow podcast. You can find all the episodes on the rhaccelerator.com website or YouTube or any of the podcast platforms. So until next week, thank you for watching.